Donnie Darko, the mind-bending 2001 masterpiece written and directed by Richard Kelly. In this video we will be diving straight into its deeper themes and symbolism. It's a journey that will take us to some deeply disturbing places because this film explores some of the most profound questions that humans can ask. But on the far side of that, there's something else. There's
this discourse that exists in the realm of the internet. I'm grateful for anyone that wants to write a term paper or build a blog or express an opinion about what the film means.
Richard Kelly was very meticulous and intentional about building many of the details into the film.
Right when the song starts, the doors to the bus open. The camera does a 180-degree thing like this. As they pile out of the back of the emergency gate thing, they land on the ground, boom.
But for other details, including some of the most memorable, he was guided purely by instinct.
I still, to this day, I will never know why it's a rabbit. It just came to me. Maybe it had something to do with Watership Down, which is featured in the film.
When the other rabbits hear of Pfeiffer's vision, do they believe him?
Why should we care?
Because the rabbits are us, Donnie.
The result is a vivid expression of Kelly's own particular childhood context, Virginia in the 1980s. The story is told through teenage eyes, the new generation, nuclear families living in spacious suburban houses. On paper, the American dream has come true, and yet an unspoken crisis looms over these kids, a timeless question expressed in a new way. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What is the meaning of life? We will now be entering spoiler territory, so if you haven't yet seen the film and you'd like to go in knowing very little, then I encourage you to stop watching here and feel free to return to this video afterwards. The young Donnie Darko is presented with a whole array of tools to try and make sense of the world around him. There's his therapist, Dr. Thurman, who seeks a psychiatric explanation for his behaviour.
His increased detachment from reality seemed to stem from his inability to cope with the forces in the world that he perceives to be threatening. Donnie is experiencing what is commonly called a daylight hallucination. This is a common occurrence among paranoid schizophrenics.
There's the vacuous teaching of Jim Cunningham, a new age self-help guru who reduces everything to the individual's quest to conquer fear.
My name is Jim Cunningham, and welcome to Controlling Fear.
There's the moralistic religion of Mrs. Fields, who claims to know God, or at least a God.
Our paths through life must be righteous. I urge you to go home and look in the mirror and pray that your son doesn't succumb to the path of fear.
But really, it seems her allegiance is to Jim Cunningham and his philosophy, to the extent that when he's exposed as a predator, she refuses to believe the evidence.
It's obviously some kind of conspiracy to destroy an innocent man. And I have taken it upon myself to spearhead the Jim Cunningham defense campaign.
And yet, she's more than happy to eviscerate Donnie's English teacher, Miss Pomeroy, for the literature that she has chosen to explore with her class.
The PTA is here to acknowledge that pornography is being taught in our curriculum.
It's meant to be ironic.
Excuse me, you need to go back to grad school.
Miss Pomeroy herself represents another influence in Donnie's life, an appreciation of story and beauty.
This famous linguist once said that of all the phrases in the English language, of all the endless combinations of words in all of history, that cellar door is the most beautiful.
And she becomes the partner of his science teacher, Dr. Monitoff, a source of insight regarding the mechanics of space and time.
A wormhole with an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is theoretically a wormhole in space controlled by man. According to Hawking, a wormhole may be able to provide a shortcut for jumping between two distant regions of space-time.
So in order to travel back in time, you have to have a big spaceship or something that can travel faster than the speed of light.
Theoretically.
And be able to find one of these wormholes.
But, like Miss Pomeroy, he's being held in check by the school authorities. He can only go so far in addressing the meaning that Donnie seeks, because as soon as Donnie's questions turn from how questions to why questions, Dr. Monotov is afraid and maybe unable to answer.
I'm not going to be able to continue this conversation.
Why?
I could lose my job.
But he does point Donnie to a woman who might be able to help, and her understanding of the world is the one that appears to be vindicated by the film.
Don't tell anybody that I gave you this.
In the 2004 director's cut of Donnie Darko, we are shown pages from this book, providing what I will call the official interpretation of the film. And as we'll see, if you look at the film through this framework, a lot of things begin to fall into place. Apologies if you've already heard it, but it will become important for later. I'll go through it as fast as I can. Incidents when the fabric of the fourth dimension becomes corrupted are incredibly rare. If a tangent universe occurs, it will be highly unstable, sustaining itself for no longer than several weeks. Eventually it will collapse upon itself, forming a black hole within the primary universe, capable of destroying all existence. So that's the big picture. Donnie Darko is going about his business in the primary universe, and something corrupts the timeline. We never find out what. But that creates a tangent universe, an alternate reality. And the next 28 days play out in that tangent universe.
28 days. 6 hours. 42 minutes. 12 seconds. That is when the world will end.
Artifacts provide the first sign that a tangent universe has occurred. In Donnie Darko, the artifact is of course the jet engine which falls on Donnie's bedroom. It represents a glitch in the fabric of space-time. This tangent universe already contains another jet engine just like it. So now there's an anomaly, a duplicate. And as a result, forces in the tangent universe will seek to regurgitate the second jet engine out of the tangent universe and into the primary universe. This will allow the tangent universe to collapse and iron out the wrinkle in time, and then life will be able to continue in the primary universe. Donnie himself is chosen for the most crucial role in this process of saving reality. He is the living receiver. As Roberta Sparrow writes, the living receiver is chosen to guide the artifact into position for its journey back to the primary universe. No one knows how or why a receiver will be chosen. The manipulated living are often the close friends and neighbours of the living receiver. They are prone to irrational, bizarre, and often violent behaviour. This is the unfortunate result of their task, which is to assist the living receiver in returning the artifact to the primary universe. So people in the neighbourhood are working, perhaps in ways that they themselves don't realise, to help Donnie complete his quest. Donnie falls in love with Gretchen, and at the climax of the film, Gretchen is run over by Frank.
What were you guys doing in the middle of the road, huh?
The distraught Donnie shoots Frank in the eye. So both Gretchen and Frank die in this tangent universe, and that turns them into manipulated dead, allowing them to travel back in time and influence the events leading up to their deaths. The rabbit is the ghost of Frank, appearing in a prophetic vision prior to the death of Frank. It is the voice that calls Donnie out of the house, saving his life from the jet engine crash and guiding him in his quest as the living receiver. Now, all these characters, including Donnie himself, how much do they know about what's really going on? Are they aware of their cosmic roles in healing this particular corruption of the fourth dimension? Or are they performing their roles out of instinct? Well, we'll press into that more when we get to the issue of Predestination, but we do know that Donnie has Roberta Sparrow's book in his possession for much of the movie, and so by the end he definitely knows something of what's going on. Is he killing Frank out of pure revenge? Or does he have a sense that even the bad things, like Frank's death, will ultimately be used for the salvation of reality? Well, Donnie does say this.
Go home! Go home and tell your parents everything's gonna be okay!
Donnie is a flawed hero. He's a teenager with raging hormones. He's trying to figure things out. And I think it's a mixture of him acting out of instinct and being aware to some degree of his higher calling. In any case, when his girlfriend dies and when he has blood on his hands, he is brought to the end of himself. The only way he can save her, and perhaps all of reality, is to send the jet engine to the primary universe. And that's what happens. Donnie uses the supernatural powers that have been bestowed upon him to wrench an engine from an aeroplane flying overhead. It's no coincidence that there's an aeroplane flying overhead at that moment. And he sends it back in time into the primary universe. And this causes the safe collapse of the tangent universe, bringing us back to the 2nd of October. Donnie awakes in bed, laughing. And here comes the tragedy. In the tangent universe, he was spared from the impact of the jet engine in order to fulfill his role as the living receiver, but he succeeded. And now, the tangent universe doesn't exist, it won't exist. Here, back in the primary universe, his destiny is to be in his bedroom at this moment in time, and he is killed as the jet engine, the only physical remnant of the tangent universe, as it smashes into his room. Donnie Darko dies so that reality may be saved. What about the others? When the manipulated awaken from their journey into the tangent universe, they are often haunted by the experience in their dreams. Many of them will not remember. Those who do remember the journey are often overcome with profound remorse for the regretful actions buried within their dreams. The only physical evidence buried within the artifact itself, all that remains from the lost world. And this comes across on the final page of the script.
What was his name?
Donnie Darko. Did you know him?
She stares at the family for several moments, and then shakes her head slowly as if trying to locate a memory that is slipping away.
No.
Rose, leaning against a tree while smoking a cigarette, notices them. She seems to recognise Gretchen from somewhere in the vast reservoir of her memory. She waves at her. She waves back. And that's where the film ends. It's beautifully melancholic. These characters have a sense that they are connected, but they don't quite know how. So that's it. That's the official interpretation of Donnie Darko. Seems like our work is done here. Case closed. Unless maybe there's more going on. In a 2003 interview with Kevin Conroy Scott, Richard Kelly said this regarding the Philosophy of Time Travel book. I felt like it was a way for me to come to terms with this mystery I had created. Writing those pages was a way for me to say, here's my theory, I may be wrong, but here it is. I considered myself to be just a viewer when I wrote it, not the filmmaker. It was meant to be an argument that people could agree or disagree with. Ultimately, I think those pages probably caused people to ask more questions about what it all means. So the official interpretation, if we can call it that, it's important, but Richard Kelly doesn't want us to see it as the definitive, exhaustive interpretation of the film. There's more going on. So let's keep going. Donnie Darko grapples with the idea that there is a cosmic purpose to reality. Things happen for a reason, including human activity, even if our modern thinking conditions us to believe that we are these autonomous individuals deciding everything for ourselves. And Richard Kelly needed to find a visual way of expressing this idea of destiny.
Well, each vessel travels along a vector through space-time along its center of gravity.
Like a spear that comes out of your chest.
Sure.
Well, if God controls time, then all time's pre-decided.
I'm not following you.
Like every living thing follows along set path. And if you could see your path or channel, then you could see into the future, right? Like, that's a form of time travel.
This is what Donnie has been observing as the living receiver. He can see the paths that people are following into the future. He can see the world in 4 dimensions.
The first 3 dimensions can be described with these words: length, width, then depth. What word can we assign to the 4th dimension? One answer would be duration. If we think of ourselves as we were 1 minute ago, and then imagine ourselves as we are at this moment, the line we could draw from the 1 minute ago version to the right now version would be a line in the 4th dimension. If you were to see your body in the 4th dimension, you'd be like a long undulating snake, with your embryonic self at one end and your deceased self at the other.
Here's an interesting conundrum. Donnie is beginning to see his own future as well as that of the people around him.
Well, you're contradicting yourself, Donnie. If we were able to see our destinies manifest themselves visually, then we would be given a choice to betray our chosen destinies. And the mere fact that this choice exists would make all preformed destiny come to an end.
Here's Dr. Monotoff's objection. If Donnie really could see his own future, wouldn't that cause him to change his future?
Not if you travel within God's channel.
Donnie's response is very interesting. Not if you travel within God's channel. Because if there is a sovereign God ruling over the universe who can see the future, then the ultimate timeline of the universe is pre-decided. And if we do the will of God, if we travel within God's channel, if we are aligned to the greater purpose of the cosmos, then we're heading towards our destiny, and knowing our destiny, or part of it, won't change that. It won't derail the plan. But this is where Dr. Monotoff chooses to end the conversation.
I'm not going to be able to continue this conversation.
Why?
I could lose my job.
Okay.
In raising these questions about predestination, the film can't help but raise questions about the existence of God. Earlier in the movie, God seems to be silent to Donnie, if indeed there is a God.
Donnie, what did Roberta Sparrow say to you?
She said that every living creature on Earth dies alone.
Do you feel alone right now?
I mean, I'd like to believe I'm not, but I've just never seen any proof, so I just don't debate it anymore. It's absurd.
The search for God is absurd?
It is if everyone dies alone.
Does that scare you?
I don't want to be alone.
Roberta Sparrow used to be a nun, but something changed.
She was a nun many years before that, but and then overnight she just she became this entirely different person. She up and left the church. She wrote this book. She started teaching science right here at Middlesex.
Dr. Monotoff seems to imply that in writing the philosophy of time travel, Roberta Sparrow had departed from her belief in God entirely. But that may not be the case. Notice how in the introduction of the book she talks about the grace of God and praying for her readers. The intent of this short book is for it to be used as a simple and direct guide in a time of great danger. I pray that this is merely a work of fiction. If it is not, then I pray for you, the reader of this book. If I am still alive when the events foretold in these pages occur, then I hope that you will find me before it is too late. Roberta Ann Sparrow, October 1944. Her revelations in the book, if true, are certainly earth-shattering, but they don't necessarily rule out the existence of the supernatural. After all, some kind of higher power must be at work, choosing the living receiver and guiding the events around him to heal the corruption in the fabric of the fourth dimension. And consider the letter that Donnie writes to her at the end of the movie. Dear Roberta Sparrow, I've reached the end of your book and there are so many things that I need to ask you. Sometimes I am afraid of what you might tell me. Sometimes I am afraid that you'll tell me that this is not a work of fiction. I can only hope that the answers will come to me in my sleep. I hope that when the world comes to an end, I can breathe a sigh of relief because there will be so much to look forward to. And just after we hear him say that, we see MC Escher's eye hanging on his wall, an eye containing a skull. Perhaps Donnie is beginning to comprehend his death, his purpose, the purpose of him dying alone. Perhaps he's beginning to look towards that destiny. And why is he laughing when he wakes up? Maybe some answers did indeed come to him in his sleep. So I don't see Donnie Darko as an atheistic film. At the very least, it's agnostic on the big questions of life. Donnie Darko also has a lot to say about eschatology, the area of theology concerned with the last things, the end times. The film begins with an end times prophecy, and as it approaches this deadline, the drama intensifies like birth pangs. Jim Cunningham rises in popularity, a wicked man enticing the people with a message that's easy to swallow but fails to nourish. He's a bit like the man of lawlessness, who will appear in the last days to lead many people astray. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie.
You see the fear, people? This boy is scared to death of the truth. Son, it breaks my heart to say this, but I believe you are a very troubled and confused young man. I believe you are searching for the answers in all the wrong places.
Another name for this figure is the Antichrist.
I think you're the Antichrist.
So Donnie can see through Jim Cunningham's mask, and although he's unaware of his own cosmic purpose for much of the film, he participates in enacting judgment on the false teaching that pervades his town. First, he floods the school. Later, he sets fire to Jim Cunningham's house, allowing the authorities to discover the incriminating evidence within.
Now, firefighters discovered what has been referred to as a kiddie porn dungeon. Cunningham, who has become a recent celebrity for his books and motivational tapes, was arrested early this morning.
These two judgments are reminiscent of 2 Peter. Long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. That's referring to Noah's flood. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and the destruction of the ungodly. So in the biblical narrative, the entire world was judged first with water, and one day it will be judged with fire. Likewise, Donnie Darko judges the tangent universe first with water and then with fire. Eventually, when the tangent universe collapses, Donnie sacrifices himself so that life may continue in the primary universe. And this has led many to see Donnie as a Christ figure, the self-sacrificial hero. How does Richard Kelly respond to that? Well, it's a comic book story in a way, and he is a kind of superhero. I think there is a messiah undercurrent to a lot of superhero stories. Anytime you are dealing with a hero who has to save the world, there is going to be a link to Christ mythology. You know, we made a sight gag as a reference to Scorsese's film. When Donnie comes out of the cinema, the marquee shows The Last Temptation of Christ. As Antonio Garcia Martinez says, the Western mind is like a tuning fork calibrated to one frequency, the Christ story. Hit it with the right Christ figure and it'll just hum deafeningly in resonance. For centuries we have been meditating on the story of Christ crucified, and that has had a profound impact on our storytelling. Richard Kelly even recorded a rather shocking piece of footage, which is mentioned in the script, the deceased Donnie impaled by a wooden beam.
There were actually different stuff that we didn't use. There was a shot where Donnie was actually impaled. So we had a couple different endings because we weren't sure if we wanted to physically show his sacrifice or to allow people to extrapolate their own view of the ending.
And it was really disturbing. It was a step too far. It was something that no one really wanted to see.
But his instinct is understandable. The cross itself is a very visceral image, Jesus nailed to a piece of wood, choking to death. And yet, it is where his glory is revealed, God the Son descending to the deepest depths of agony in self-sacrificial love. And of course, unlike Donnie Darko, the story doesn't end with the self-sacrifice. Jesus returns from the dead, he's resurrected. Some people online, including the blog donniedarko.org.uk, they even argue that the death of Donnie isn't actually necessary to save reality. They would argue that reality is saved just before he dies, when the jet engine is sent into the primary universe. And therefore, in terms of the fabric of space-time, Donnie's death doesn't actually accomplish anything. And yet, even with all these ambiguities, it's hard not to feel a kind of mythic resonance with Donnie's death at the end. It does feel like he's laying down his life in order to save the world. And I think that is the deepest question raised by the film. It knows that self-sacrifice is somehow ultimate and glorious, but why? Is it merely a quirk of the cosmos? Or is it pointing to a self-sacrificial God who is presiding over it all? Donnie Darko grapples with the mysteries of reality without arriving at easy answers. It's happy to dwell in the mystery, and that makes it compelling. It imbues everyday life with a sense of cosmic significance. and I think that's why it has captured our imaginations. I can't tell you how much I love this film. It's an absolute masterpiece. Let me know what you think in the comments. My name is Thomas Thorogood. I get into the deeper meaning of movies. Do subscribe if you'd like to stay in the loop. And remember, it's deeper than you think. Thanks for watching.